Guitarist John Sykes has died at age 65 after a long battle with cancer. In his final days, he spoke of his sincere love and gratitude for his fans who stuck by him through all these years. While the impact of his loss is profound and the mood somber, we hope the light of his memory will extinguish the shadow of his absence. It is with great sorrow we share that John Sykes has passed away after a hard-fought battle with cancer, the statement reads. He will be remembered by many as a man with exceptional musical talent. But for those who didn't know him personally, he was a thoughtful, kind, and charismatic man whose presence lit up the room. He certainly marched to the beat of his own drum and always pulled for the underdog. With a Les Paul custom and a vibrato wider than the English Channel, Sykes made his mark most notably with Thin Lizzy and Whitesnake in the 1980s. That's Sykes' dynamic playing, part masterful melodist, part muscular shredder. On Whitesnake mega hits like Still of the Night, is This Love and the indomitable Here I Go Again, describing his goal with the formerly pub-rocking Whitesnake, whom he joined in 1983 and exited under acrimonious circumstances, just after recording the massive-selling 1987 self-titled album. He said he wanted to bring in a modern, edgy guitar sound with melody, finesse, and drive, and that he did. It's also a pretty accurate description of Sykes' guitar approach throughout his career. Sykes came on the scene in 1980 as a member of new wave of British heavy metal tigers of Pan Tang. But within a few years, he hooked up with Phil Lynott in the final version of Thin Lizzy, joining the band for one studio album, Thunder and Lightning, and a farewell tour. Tracks like Thunder and Lightning and the Lynott/Sykes co-write Cold Sweat showcased his massive blues rock on steroids tone, which came courtesy of his 1978 Les Paul custom Black Beauty through modded Marshall amplifiers, later Mesa/Boogies. They also demonstrated a truly overwhelming lead style influenced by Sykes' rock and metal forebears, Page, Blackmore, Gary Moore et al., with the intensity increased by 10 notches. In his hands, pentatonic runs were blistering bursts of alternate-picked lines that climaxed in screaming sustained notes and squealing artificial harmonics, spiked with tapped flurries, frantic tremolo-picked phrases and wide, vocal-like vibratos. Sykes later helped bring Whitesnake kicking and screaming into the shred-obsessed 80s, where they sold a bazillion units of their 1987 self-titled album. For what it's worth, Whitesnake leader David Coverdale had to hire not one but two guitarists to fill his prodigious shoes after Sykes left the band that same year. Afterward, Sykes formed Blue Murder with bassist Tony Franklin and drummer Carmine Appice. Their self-titled debut made the Billboard 200 and gave them a minor hit with Jelly Roll. But with the advent of grunge, their brand of rock fell out of fashion. Sykes concentrated on his solo career following his departure from Blue Murder in 1994. He released 5 albums between 1995 and 2004, and while numerous projects were discussed or hinted at, nothing came of them. His last releases were the songs Dawning of a Brand New Day and Out Alive, both of which came out in 2021 and were intended for his much-anticipated solo album Psyops. That album had a tentative release date for 2025. Sykes was heavily involved in the making of Whitesnake's next album, co-writing 9 songs with vocalist David Coverdale. Sykes began pushing the band towards a more mainstream sound, which Coverdale described as leaner, meaner, and more electrifying. The two began writing together in the south of France in early 1985, before heading to Little Mountain Sound Studios in Vancouver to begin recording. Eventually, though, Coverdale's relationship with the rest of the band began to sour. He then fired all other members of the group, including Sykes. Whitesnake's 7th album was released in April 1987, and it became the band's most commercially successful album to date, reaching number 2 on the Billboard 200 chart and selling over 8 million copies in the US. The iconic guitarist also had a successful solo career prior to his passing. His first solo record, Out of My Tree, came out in 1995. Sykes released 2 albums in 1997 and 1 in 2000. His last album, Bad Boy Live, was released in 2004. The music community paid tribute to Sykes via social media on both Monday and Tuesday. Tony Franklin, who was part of Whitesnake and Blue Murder, honored his late friend via X, writing, "My deepest heartfelt thanks for all your kind wishes and condolences for the passing of John Sykes." He added, "I am heartbroken and will miss him terribly. I'm thankful for the time we had together and the music we created. Rest peacefully, John. Love you forever." John James Sykes was born July 29, 1959 in Reading, Berkshire, the Sykes family spent 3 years living in Ibiza, Spain, where John's father and uncle owned a discotheque. Afterward, they moved back to Reading. At age 14, Sykes took an interest in the guitar when his uncle showed him how to play some of Eric Clapton's licks. For the next 2 years, he practiced playing blues songs on an old nylon string guitar. Upon returning to Reading, Sykes entered a relationship and essentially gave up the guitar for a year and a half. After moving to Blackpool, Sykes resumed playing and was asked to join the band Street Fighter by his friend Mervyn Goldsworthy, who would later play bass in Diamond Head, Samson, and FM. After his departure from Tigers of Pan Tang, Sykes was still contractually obligated to deliver a single to the band's label MCA Records. Through Tigers of Pan Tang producer Chris Tsangarides, Sykes got in touch with Thin Lizzy frontman Phil Lynott. The two co-wrote and performed the single Please Don't Leave Me, which was released in 1982. The track also featured fellow Thin Lizzy members Brian Downey and Darren Wharton. Afterwards, Sykes was asked to join Thin Lizzy. He was officially confirmed as the band's new guitarist in September 1982. Sykes performed on the group's 1983 album Thunder and Lightning, for which he also co-wrote the single Cold Sweat. Sykes' inclusion helped revitalize the band, steering them towards a sound more akin to heavy metal. The supporting tour for Thunder and Lightning was billed as Thin Lizzy's farewell tour, though Sykes and Lynott were eager to continue further. During the tour, the band recorded the live album Life. Sykes also accompanied Lynott on a European solo tour. Thin Lizzy played their final UK concert at the Reading Festival in August 1983, before finally disbanding after a show at Nuremberg's Monsters of Rock Festival on September 4th. Tributes to Sykes poured out from his fans and former bandmates in the hours after his death was announced.